So I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for Herb Van Patten for being here on our podcast. It's the Hire Talent Podcast, hiring for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. And Herb Van Patten is the Vice President and COO of ISIS Solutions. He has this really cool concept that he introduced to me a couple of weeks ago, and I just wanted to have him on and share this with everybody else in our world. But it's this: what to expect in your path of mastery. And I think it's maybe a little bit of an underrated topic, right? Like, I mean, we all talk about mastering things, but there's this long journey people go through to get there. And Herb really has this really unique, cool way of thinking about it and talking to people about it that helps people get there and stay engaged on that path. So welcome. Thank you for being here, Herb.
Thank you, Fletcher. And it's really your LinkedIn blog post that really connected us on this particular topic, because if memory serves, it was about the mistake of taking a highly capable, highly talented individual, putting them in a high complex job that they're fully capable of performing, but just kind of throwing them into it. And oftentimes, too often, that leads to the individual failing that position for no other reason than they weren't ramped up properly, and they really didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, and so that's we talk about a fact-driven hiring system, and that's the training and onboarding piece, and that's just like the saddest thing to ever happen, right? Is when you hire this person and you have a lot of evidence, right? They have like great stability. You meet them, they're really dynamic. You dig into their work history, and they've done some amazing things and had some great accomplishments, and so you have all the reasons to believe. They have like amazing references. Their bosses say glowing things about them. So you have like all the reasons in the world to believe that this person is probably a rock star, right? And then for them to fizzle out after a few months, that's a pretty disappointing situation to find yourself in. And you pick up on that concept really well. And I never really thought about it in the way you do. I thought about it a little bit, but so why don't you share with us? I think you have kind of a really cool presentation, and let's start going through this, and we'll have a conversation as we do.
Sure. We can either start with a little background of what led me to this. Okay, very good. So, hardship is a part of every life, every career, and at the end of the day, I think it's a good thing, because it does toughen us up. That's what tough times do. Is they teach us who we really are and what we can handle, and it makes us stronger in the survival of it. And we talk about those highly capable individuals that we put in those highly complex positions. And for the most part, most individuals, even though it's going to be rigorous, it's going to be tough to get through, they're going to get through it. But there is a certain percentage of folks, and in my world, especially with a certain position, our case managers, I noticed early on, after taking this role, that we had about a 1 in 5, 20% false start rate. And we would define that as those new hires that we put in the role, and they would quit before 6 months or even a year. And there was just something wrong about that. And so one particular first week of training, I checked in with one of our new case managers, for lack of a better name, we'll call him Paul, but a highly capable individual. He was a chiropractor and a practicing chiropractor, but then also got his RN license because he really liked that treatment side of healthcare. And so we hired him on as a new case manager. And it was day 4 of the first week of training, Thursday. Walked into the training room and immediately saw that there was something wrong. He didn't look well. He was sweating. His skin was blotchy. If his eyes could do this, they were doing that. And it really alarmed me. So I said, "Hey, Paul, is everything okay?" He said, "No, Herb, it isn't." I said, "Do I need to call 911? He said, "No, it's not that." I said, "Okay, what is it?" He said, "Herb, I'm a pretty brilliant guy." He was, and that's why we hired him. But he knew it as well. He said, I'm a pretty brilliant guy. And, when I went to chiropractic school, I was able to get through it. Every new subject, I was able to immediately grasp the subject matter, and I had no problem with it. Same with nursing school. Whatever the next course was, I could quickly grasp the concepts and move on. He said, "I've been here 4 days now. I'm not getting this." I don't know what I've got myself into, and I think somebody made a mistake. And so we talked about it a little bit, and I tried to reassure him that no, we don't make mistakes necessarily, because we have a very rigorous hiring process, and we know what we're looking for, and we know that those we bring on board are capable of making it through training and doing a great job as case managers. And he just wasn't believing me. So I started to tell him, try to describe to him what his path to eventual mastery in the role was going to look like, especially early on, but it wasn't clicking. So I took him into my office where I have this big, beautiful whiteboard and started diagramming out what I was trying to explain to him. At the end of the diagram, I asked him, does this make sense? He said, yes, it does. I said, do you trust me? He said, yes, I do. I said, so here's what I'd like you to do, Paul. Take a picture of what's on the whiteboard. That's your path to mastery. When you have those moments of doubt, I want you to look at the path, try to see where you are on it, and then give me a call the next morning, because usually that will happen in the wee hours of the morning. I say, call me the next morning and we'll talk about it. Well, through that first year, he called me about 4 or 5 times and we discussed it. He was having a rough time, but he eventually made it through and ended up being a great case manager. And so what I started doing with every new batch of new hires, new case managers, I would diagram the process. And what I realized in short order is our false start rate went from about 1 in 5 to now what it is, about 1 in 20.
Yeah.
Still too high for me. I'd like to have 100%, but I'll take.
Well, you're way better than the national average, which is, well, before COVID was 1 in 20, or 1 in 5. Sorry, was the 20% turnover rate, right? Nationally across all businesses in the U.S. So
Sure.
You're substantially lower than those folks, and that's great. One thing I picked up from your retelling of the story, you told me this story a couple weeks ago, is there's another little component that I miss, is there's like career counseling. You're there for him. Like, it's not just like, okay, you explain this concept and and it makes sense, and everybody's going, when you explain this to us, it's all going to make sense, but that you also make it a point to be there for the person, to sort of let them vent or let them share their feelings. And I was just at a dinner last night with a few other entrepreneurs, and something kind of not great happened, and I was able to like just share, right? And that, like, it's a bit therapeutic to be able to get off your chest, right?
Yeah.
Talk yourself off the ledge by sharing.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's a critical element of it, that constant support. You just can't hire somebody, explain what the role is, and even explain what they're going to experience, and then say, have at it and good luck to you. You've got to support them along the entire path, at least until they realize themselves, I'm going to make this. And there is a very specific point at which that happens. And that's why I now have taken to doing this with not only every new case manager hire, but every hire in the company, because it just helps them. And if they're among those 20% who fear failure, let's just say that, then that typically will help carry them through, knowing that not only this is what I should expect, but that we know what they're going through, that the mistakes they make, the failures that they feel they're making, that's all part of the process. And that alone saves a lot of would-be false starts to continue their path.
It's a very great exercise in empathetic leadership.
Well, I don't think there's any other way to do it. In my humble opinion, emotional intelligence, basically empathy, is, if you talk to any employee who's worked for an unempathetic boss, we know that the number one reason for folks looking for a new job to leave their current job is because they have a bad boss. And maybe they're not a bad boss, but they're certainly not leading with that empathetic element, which is so necessary. And when I think back to our false start rate, or any false start rate that is unnecessary, it's really the employer's fault. It's the employer who needs to take the blame on that. Not that we're ever looking for blame, but but that's what it is. So it's the
Yeah.
employer's responsibility, especially with this new crop of these Gen Z, these Zoomers, they're great once you get to know them, brilliant, they want to succeed, but they're a different batch, and you cannot successfully lead a group like that without having a high level of emotion.
I like how you point out that it is the employer's responsibility to make sure that that person is successful within the role. And because I always talk about that from a talent acquisition, a talent assessment perspective, as an interviewer or person evaluating a candidate in the hiring process, it's my job to make sure that that person is going to be a great fit for the organization, for the role, so that they will be successful and achieve their personal and professional goals, right? And they're linked together. It's not for me. Like as an organization or as a leader, I'm going to get some benefit if Anna is successful in her role, but if I don't think about her own personal desire and personal and professional development and not focused on it from that perspective, then I'm always going to fall short, and I'm definitely never going to have the right level of empathy. And this comes up a lot when I hear managers say, well, they told me that they were great at QuickBooks, or they told me they're great at attention to details, or they told me that they were the best salesperson ever, or they told me they wanted this job, right? And then they're sort of blaming the individual, right? And I think that's misguided in a sense, because of course they told you those things. They're interviewing for a job. They need a job. They need to put food on the table. They need to pay their mortgage or car or whatever, right? Of course they said those things. It's my job as the interviewer to dig deeper, but beyond that superficial, the person is telling me these things, to really find the truth out. And then, me and the person have to then, but being the expert in this, it's really my job to lead them in the right direction, right? And
100%. And that's really, for those who know situational leadership, that is rule number one, is where is this individual, not only in each individual task that you need to teach them. So they're going to be at, for those who know it, the D1 level, which means that my level of support is going to be S1 for all those tasks, but you can aggregate it to the individual, that individual, regardless of their knowledge and experience, their skills and abilities, they still have to be oriented to that role that they're in for your company and what they need to do for that. And so they're starting at the very beginning. And so if you don't take the necessary support level, meaning S1 on most things, then you're setting them up for failure. And that's why it's the employer's responsibility to make sure that once you've identified that this is a capable person, they're going to do a great job in the role, it's the employer's responsibility to make sure that person has the best chance to succeed by giving them the necessary support they need at every stage.
And blaming the individual is just shooting yourself in the foot.
and it's also very expensive. I mean, for our new case managers, we don't really see a net positive revenue for at least 9 months, usually a year, which means it's all investment of money, time, effort, energy, and resources. And that gets into the 6 figures for every individual. So not only is it very costly for us, but we're taking an individual who was successful in what they were doing before. That's why we hired them. And now we're not giving them the chance to succeed with us, and it derails their career path for a time. Mm-hmm. So it's not fair for anybody in the process. But of course, in running the company, that's our main concern is let's go find the best people for the job, put them in it, and make sure they have the best chance of succeeding by supporting them at every step of the way until they reach that even D3 to D4 level, which is real mastery.
And that cost is, there's a cost of acquisition. And actually, I was just creating some videos about this over the weekend. I've spent like a lot of time thinking about this. You hear the experts throw out numbers like the cost of a bad hire, or the cost of getting it wrong, or the cost of turnover being, 1 to 2.5 times the employee's annual salary. And you go like, as leaders, we've been indoctrinated with that idea. I think it's not an uncommon idea. It's not like the first time anybody
Sure.
said that to you before, right? And you think about it, you're like, well, I gotta run some ads, spend a little bit of time interviewing them. I spend some time training and onboarding them. Like, does that really cost $250,000 for $100,000 a year person? Like, like, I don't know, where'd you get to that number, right? And I think you're starting to hit on it, right? So, okay, sure, maybe it cost me like 10 or 15 grand to like, if you hard cost of walking through the
Sure.
hiring process and getting them physically onboarded, like really basic stuff like the paperwork and the uniforms and the
Sure.
equipment, right? Or whatever, right? Okay, but where does the rest of that money come from? And you started to touch on that, Herb. Share that with us.
Yeah, absolutely. When you think about what it takes, and even when you start the process, you're looking to recruit. Okay, those are the dollar costs are the easiest to calculate, but it's the other costs, the soft costs, the opportunity costs, which I'll go into. Whatever you're focused on, there's opportunities that you're not, and those are sometimes the biggest costs because when you have a false start, especially with somebody who should be in the role and somebody who should be successful, it sets everybody back. And so all those costs that are already sunk are now gone and you have to start over. It
Yeah.
begins to multiply and snowball very quickly, and it is costly.
Yeah, a lack of production, right? And I mean, you shared. I mean, it takes you kind of a year to get somebody full production. That means you need, double the number of people for a short period of time, or they're only getting half as much work done as the next person, and that's lost opportunity costs, right? If they're only
Absolutely.
at 50% production, then they're producing $1 million a year worth of revenue for the business, then you just lost $500,000.
Yeah, absolutely. It adds up quickly, and it, for the role we're talking about, our case managers, especially the way we do case management, we don't look for individuals who have prior experience in that role. In fact, we typically will not look at those individuals because we just do things differently, which is why
Yeah.
we have our own training department, and we've been kind of chided for now being a training company, which we are. We have no problem with that.
Yeah.
It's a point of pride, but it takes a lot to get these case managers to a point where they even understand what they're doing, and that's typically about a year because there's
Yeah.
so many moving parts to it, and so it is a costly endeavor to train new case managers. And when you have a false start, that's a lot of money down the tube, and it doesn't do them any favors either. And we do
Yeah.
a really good job of making sure we don't make bad hires. We rarely make bad hires because our process is very extensive. We take a lot of time in finding the right individuals and take them through the interview process to make sure we have the right folks. So we're pretty darn sure. So every false start hurts. It hurts
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's an emotional toll too. I mean, so we talked a little bit about the hard costs. We talked a little about the opportunity costs. There's even these soft costs, like I paid this person $100,000 for the first year and then they're out of here. Maybe they got a little bit of production for that value, but that's still kind of like 100 grand of hard costs sunk. But there's an emotional cost to everybody in the organization, to the individual who obviously, I like the way you put it, we're derailing their career when it doesn't work out, right? So there's a huge emotional toll for them, but for internally, their coworkers and you guys as leaders. I've had to let some people go in my career, more than I would like to say. And you talk about the sweats and the anxiety and the sleepless nights. I mean, it always takes me like 2 weeks longer than I want to do because I'm just terrified of having to do it, right? And the emotion in like it derails me emotionally for weeks to be able to have to let somebody go, right? Or
it's never a pleasant. It should never be a pleasant process. I've let a few folks go in my career as well, and there's nothing good about it other than at the end of the day, if somebody is really not proving to be right for the role, then you have to get somebody who can do that role, and you're actually freeing up that individual from their perspective. It's as painful for them as well. They're in a role that they don't like, they're not enjoying, and they know they're not right for it.
Yeah.
So, but it's still painful, and it does take its emotional toll.
Yeah. And if they leave you, it's equally as emotional. And I was just talking to a gal that I helped place, and now we help coach their organization on hiring. And so she's the head of operations for their organizations, a CPA firm. And we were just interviewed a gal for another job, and we were doing interview with her, and we are just afterwards kind of shooting the breeze, and she's a really nice gal. And she's like, well, I remember when you interviewed me, and and my boss Jeremy gave me the offer, and I went to my boss and I put in my notice, and she's like, he literally turned into a child. He threw a tantrum. He got really upset. He walked out of the room. He went into the hallway, and I could hear him screaming.
Mhm.
And she's like, I had to excuse myself from the situation, say, look, we need both time to calm down. Like these people liked each other.
Yeah.
So maybe I should have prefaced it that way. These people had a strong emotional connection to each other. They genuinely liked each other. And this is how the breakup went, right? Like the guy went in the hallway and screams like a child.
Sure.
And that just highlights the emotional toll that these things happen when there's a breakup, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I see that story as there's a silver lining to it. The boss who turned into a child was that emotionally engaged
Yeah.
in the relationship, the employee-employer relationship. I see that as a good thing.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the response that
Yeah.
could have been better controlled, but it is an indicator of, especially now where I think employment is going, and that is you just can't hire people, say, do your job and get a paycheck,
Yeah.
and that's pretty much the extent of our relationship. You have to care. You have to be engaged, and it has to be genuine.
That is exactly what I said to her. I was like, some people would hear the story and say that guy's, messed up or something,
Yeah.
And I said, that's exactly what I kind of would hope would happen when you put
Yeah.
in that notice, because that tells me that you're a really good person.
Yeah.
Right. Not hope that he acts childish and screams, but
Sure.
it's actually a positive sign for exactly the reason you said. You took the word child. That's exactly what I said to her. I literally just
Yeah.
had this conversation this morning. So
let me finish that story my way. So after the tantrum, he calms down and says, you know what? Shouldn't have done that. I'm happy for you if this is what you want to do, and I fully support your next move. And damn it, I'm losing a good one.
Yeah. And that's what he ended up doing too.
Yeah.
He ended up getting on the phone with the future employer and said very nice things about her. And after he calmed down, they needed about a day or two,
Sure.
but which is rightfully so. I mean,
Understandable.
Yeah, very understandable. But this is the human reality of the situation, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything anybody should be embarrassed about for this or anything, but I just think it was just such the quintessential story that I think just paints the picture so clearly of how much emotional equity or cost that there can be in these relationships, and when they go wrong, what that how it really drains that piggy bank, emotional piggy bank.
100%.
So awesome. Well, why don't you share the presentation with us that I think you use, and I'd love to see that because it's really fun. You got these cool little stick figures and stuff. So
yeah, it's much better to see.
okay. Well, I like the stick figures. So.
Well, let me see if I can get it up here. So here we go. I'll put this screen one, and let me know if you can see it. Just the title, What to Expect Along Your Path to Mastery.
Yep. We got
Okay,
it.
so imagine, if you will, you're a new case manager with us. It's your first day, because that's now when I do it, on their very first day. And so sitting down and think about it. It's your first day of the new job. How exciting. There's going to be things that you're going to have to learn that are going to be tough, but you're still very thrilled by it. And that's why I do it on the first day, to set the expectations of what the next 6 months to a year is going to look like for them. So, and just a note here, now that I'm doing it on PowerPoint, I'm told that I'm a lot less obnoxious than doing it on the whiteboard, because I felt like a professor And I even threw in some algebra, and it was awful. So now that I've got a PowerPoint, it's a little more controlled. So this is what we start with, and it starts with this. So I'll ask the new case manager, what is this? A little obnoxious, because how are they supposed to know? They'll usually guess right. They'll say, oh, that's a starting point. Yes, they're starting a new role for them. This also works for new tasks. And what this really is it starts a timeline of their time in the role, their time with us, and it can go on and on. In fact, our hope is that everybody who joins the company will stay with us for the rest of their career. And we do that not just because we're good people, which we are, but it's good business. The longer they're in the role, the better they become. So it kicks off the timeline, and they're in day one. But as they go through day 2, day 3, week 1, week 2, they're going to cross their first significant threshold. And so we put it there. And I think it's red. I'm colorblind, but I'm told it's red. If not, I'll have to change it. So this is the first threshold they're going to cross. Can't tell them when, only they will know. But they will cross this, and they'll know they cross it because they'll take a figurative as well as a literal step. And the first thing they utter will be something akin to "holy cow." And HR did make me clean this up, so it is now safe for work. But they're going to utter something akin to this, "holy cow." And what that really is the moment that they realize that what's in front of them is immense. It's intense. That there is so much to learn that they don't know if they're going to get through it. That's the holy cow.
Let's talk about that. Anna, you're here. Welcome, to hang out with us. You must have had this experience at one point.
Yeah, definitely. For probably every job I've ever had.
Yeah. And I think I think you're going to get to it, but this is in the very early days. I mean, it's like anything you do that's new. So you're like drinking from a fire hose, right?
Yeah.
Because everything is brand new. It's all coming at you like all at once, and all these things, right? So, that holy cow threshold, often hits the first one. I don't know how many there are, but there might be many. But
well, that's the big one. That's the big one, because there is a grace period in any new role, any new task, but we'll keep to the role. There's a grace period where you go through the orientations, you're given your equipment, the information, the manuals for the job. But it's an ease into the role, but it's at this moment, the holy cow threshold, that's where the individual realizes, oh my God, this is what I have to learn. The way I explain it to our case managers is, back in the old vaudeville days, for those who actually remember what that was, stage shows, they then came out with variety shows, and now we've got social media. But it was one of the favorite acts was a plate spinner, a gentleman who'd come on and basically keep 20 plates spinning at the same time, and that was the act. Well, what our case managers are looking at is about 140 plates that they will have to keep spinning at any one time, and hence holy cow threshold, and why HR made me clean it up, because that's not usually what's uttered. It's something else.
Yeah.
So, and that may
take next.
So what I give them is a visual, which is optimistic. As you can see here, this individual is actually up off their belly, not crawling, but their face in the dirt. So that's optimistic. You may feel otherwise. But what's really going to be happening is going to feel like they have their own personal thunderstorm with lightning and hail pouring down on them every moment of the day. And this is what it's going to feel like once they cross that holy cow threshold. Once I orient them to that, I want to give them some hope. And the hope is there's another threshold. It's out there. Don't know when you're going to cross it, but you will. And this is what we call the big aha moment threshold. There will be a lot of small aha moments before that threshold, but this is the big one, and this is the one they need to focus on because it's out there. Again, I can't tell them when they're going to cross it. Only they will know. It may take weeks. It may take months. But what this threshold represents is they're nowhere close to mastering the role. But this is the moment where everything that's still in front of them, they know they've got it. They know that they can wrap their arms around it and that now they're going to survive. Up until that moment, it's constant questions. Can I do this? Will I get this? Am I good enough? So once I give them that hope, then I take them back to what's really going to be their life for the next few months, few weeks, mostly months. about 6 months on average. Very individual thing. Some take over a year. I've seen it hit as early as 2 months, but that's rare. It's average 6 months. So what they need to contend with is they're going to have a lot of confusion. Why? Because everything's new and there's so much of it. That confusion is going to lead to mistakes. And those mistakes are going to cause a certain level of anxiety. You have to understand the mindset of nurses. They tend to be, thankfully, A-type personalities and perfectionists. I wouldn't want somebody who is taking care of me not having those qualities.
Yeah.
So think about it. You've got your A-types, your perfectionists, and even though they're leaving a job for whatever reason, probably wasn't fulfilling or just need to get out of it, didn't enjoy going in every day, but at least they could go in every day knowing that whatever came their way, they were confident they could handle it. There was a certain level of confidence that they knew whatever's come my way, I'm going to take care of it. Now you put them in a new role where they don't know anything. Everything is new, and so they're confused. And when they make mistakes that are necessary for their learning process, they're going to be anxious about it. They're going to have high levels of anxiety to the point where the common experience is for many days, sometimes weeks, they're waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning, if they're lucky enough to get to sleep, but they wake up sweating, palpitating, and doubting themselves, saying, what did I do in my career? I can't do this. I made a mistake thinking I could, or they made a mistake hiring me. And so they go through this. So that's what I lay out for them. The good news is that this will decrease over time. Let me throw in a couple lines that represent that. So
being conscientious of this is the really key point, and I'd like to highlight that. I mean, perfectionists, people who are typically very analytical, who are typically highly desirable people that you want in your workforce, they're prone to some levels of anxiety with things, right? When they're not perfect, they're not just right. And the way they often deal with it, as you highlighted, they tend to internalize that, and that, creates a lot of angst and emotion and sleeplessness. And I mean, anybody who's woken up in the middle of the night, we've all probably been there and experienced that. Like, your mind starts racing, and then you're tired the next day, and you're exhausted and emotional. And I mean, all been there. So I think this is an interesting concept in the sense of like helping people identify the anxiety and the source of the anxiety. The source is coming from this confusion. Maybe it's coming from the mistakes and this feeling that I got to be perfect. But the interesting thing about mistakes, and Herb, all about this, is that's how you grow and how you learn, right? I had the pleasure of seeing a gal. I pulled up her name here, Heidi Golage, and she's here in I think she lives here locally. She owns JobBots. It's a big staffing and recruiting company. And I had the pleasure of seeing her speak. And what really resonated with her message and what you're saying here is they have like a weekly and like a monthly celebrate your mistakes contest. Like they actually pay people or reward them for sharing their mistakes, because that is where growth comes from, right?
Absolutely. And that is so healthy. And that's one thing we really focus on as part of our culture is we don't want perfection. We don't even want to think of perfection because that's a fool's pursuit. But we actually own this phrase. It's the value of excellence. So nobody uses it. It's ours. But what it really means, value of excellence really means, it means waking up every day and just trying to be a little better at something than you were yesterday. The Japanese have a term for it. It's part of their business philosophy. It's called kaizen. And that translates roughly into constant improvement. Yeah. And so mistakes are part of the process. We celebrate mistakes as well. We let our case managers and everybody else know that as you're learning the role and as you continue on your path to mastery, you're going to be, if you're doing it right, failing forward, because that's an indicator that you are outside of your comfort zone, stretching your limits, and naturally you're going to have a lot of success, but you're also going to fail, if you will. But those failures are teaching you important lessons that you apply going forward. And the more you do that, the more you're going to learn and the better you're going to be. So we're big on mistakes. We're big on failure.
Yeah. Great. Awesome. So how do you get to the aha moment?
what we do is once we orient them to the amount of confusion, mistakes, and anxiety they're going to feel, what these cones, if you will, represent is the exposure and how much confusion they're going to have, how many mistakes they're going to make, and how much anxiety they're likely to carry. And however, as they travel forward, what you see is that decreases, their exposure decreases. Why? Naturally, they're going to be learning more, repeating, and so there's going to be less confusion, which means they're not going to make as many mistakes. They're going to be making new mistakes, but fewer mistakes, which means their levels of anxiety should decrease to the point where they reach the big aha moment threshold, that moment where they know they're going to make it and things turn around for them and they flip-flop. And plus, for them, they're no longer on their belly. They're standing tall, upright, at least walking, and they could see some sunshine coming out behind that dark cloud they've been under that entire time. So as they cross their path to mastery, the confusion, the mistakes, and anxiety that ruled the day for them before the big aha moment is changed to competence and confidence. Why? Because as they're in the role longer, they gain more confidence. That confidence leads to greater confidence. They also will become more effective in the role. They'll know this because even well before they've reached mastery, our customer will start requesting certain case managers. And that's a sign that, wow, you're becoming more effective. More importantly, they're becoming more efficient in the role. There's a lot of steps that our case managers have to go through. But those things that when they first started took them 8 hours and it was 40 steps, well, they might be able to get that down to 1 hour and 8 steps later on, or even fewer. Why? Because they're learning the job. More importantly is the value portion. That as they continue along their path towards eventual mastery, because they're more effective in the role, they're becoming better at the job, their value increases in the eyes of our customers. Why? Because they're better at the job. Because of that, naturally, their value increases in our eyes as well. They're more valuable to our customers, they're more valuable to us. But more importantly is for the individual case managers, those employees, the value they have in the role and what they're getting out of the role will continue to increase. Not just the monetary value, which is important, that'll increase, but more importantly, the fulfillment they get out of the job. The fact that they are having a positive impact, not only for the injured worker and our paying customer, but think about the employers and everybody else attached to that work comp claim that they're working on. Everybody benefits. And for those who value what they're doing and want to have an impact, to me, there's nothing better than knowing that what you're doing is putting a lot of good out there.
Yeah, success. When you are successful at what you do, there's a natural reward for that, right? And that's something that creates serotonin and a good emotional state for you. So that's a huge factor there. Being mastering something and getting good at it and winning, right?
100%. So of course, this naturally increases over time. And as the individual continues working towards mastery, I think a lot of people are familiar with the concept of 10,000 hours made large by Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers, where he talks about, gives a lot of examples that lead to basically one thing, and that is it takes about 10,000 hours of concerted, focused effort to master anything. Bill Gates, the Beatles, on and on. So in a 40-hour work week, that equates to about 5 years. Our case managers are working probably a little bit more than that. It's really up to them how much they will be working. But in general, they'll reach mastery in 3.5 to 5 years.
Yeah.
So we orient them to this and let them know that even well before you are mastering the role, you're going to be sprinting at top speed in the role, and that cloud has disappeared, and you've got nothing but bright sunshine lighting your way to a wonderful career. So that's what we teach. And here's the dirty little secret, as Anna said earlier, she's walked this path in every role. So has everyone else. For our case managers, if they made it through nursing school, they can make it in this role. Most people will naturally bear through, but it's those 20% that if we can save them from feeling like they failed, like somebody made a mistake, and allow them to continue in the role, then it's a big win.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it, right? We in
That's it.
every journey we take in life, we have to go through this to some degree or another, right? And the persistence is
100%.
there. And I tell you know, people young, particularly young people, sometimes, people come to me and say, well, what can I do? But give me some career advice. And I tell them, stick with something and get good at
Yeah,
it. Like, period. I don't care what it is. Get good at something in life. And yeah, it probably takes you 10,000 hours, and that's going to take time to do that. And, uh, I'm a Zennial, and this highlights an experience that I had a lot of a while back, and I think it's still going on here. But as the whole millennial craze, millennials coming into the workforce, I'm kind of a millennial, I guess, right? And so, a lot of criticism we got about just like being flaky and not sticking
sure.
through things and not sticking with it. And I think this all ties together. Well, first of all, it's us as employers. It's our job to like help people through that hurdle, right? This
Yeah,
process. But as individuals, we do own some responsibility to, stick with something and to do it and to put our effort in and to not be so short-sighted in whatever it is that we're doing and be just jumping from one thing to the next. And this is the whole criticism about people or job hoppers on the resume. They never got good at anything,
yeah.
right?
They're false starting their entire career is
Yeah.
what they're doing. One of the more annoying things I've been told that I've been saying lately, especially to younger millennials and Gen Zs, is the best gift that life can give you is hardship. And it just doesn't land well. But I'll tell you what, for anybody who understands what that means, meaning that you grow through struggle, you grow through hardship, tough times teaches a lot of lessons that can be applied going forward that will make you better, stronger, and more appreciative of what you've gone through. And I truly believe that one of the things that is missing is we don't emphasize this at a very early age. We could take this presentation and start teaching kids at an early age that not only will they go through hardship, they should lean into it. There's a Stoic concept. One of the main principles is called amor fati, and what that means is the love of faith. And what it really is meant to say is that if you are faced with hardship, if you're going through a tough time, it's not enough just to endure it, to get through it. You should embrace it and be thankful for the opportunity to be there, to learn from it, to toughen up, and to be better for it. And I really think that's a missing element in our culture right now, where things have gotten way too easy, and the expectation is that if you're uncomfortable, something's wrong. No, if you're uncomfortable, that means you're probably in the right place, which is outside of your comfort zone. I'm a huge proponent of that.
Yeah. And you mentioned it. I'm going to pick on this. You said there's something wrong with our culture. I think it's something that's always been wrong with the culture. In period, or human beings in general have been susceptible to this problem of like, let me exit myself from the uncomfortable situation and go somewhere else or do something else. And that's a very short-sighted way of thinking about discomfort, right? But I mean, so I guess part of that story I was going to tell is that all my friends are millennials, right? And I look back at my friends I went to college with and high school with, and some of them went down the path of false start, false start, false start, false start, but many of them went down the path of sticking with something and getting really good at it. And when I look at those people now, I'm 40, going on 41.
You're
right?
a young man.
Getting older, but I mean, but these people now have 15 years into their careers.
Yeah.
Those people are winning. They are millionaires, frankly. Almost all of them are millionaires, right? Some of them very traditional jobs, like work W-2 jobs. They're millionaires. Their savings, they've bought real estate, they've invested in a career, they get paid more, they've gotten raises. I mean, so they didn't become an entrepreneur necessarily. They're not anything necessarily even a salesperson, or they got really good at a craft. Now, some of them are all of those things, but the key, and so it's like investing, right? Like if you invest, the power of compound interest. So
absolutely,
another great analogy we can use here, like invest in yourself to get excellent at something. pays compound interest.
Absolutely. And Einstein himself said that the greatest, paraphrase, the greatest power in the universe, compound
Yeah.
interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
What a great conclusion. So, well, I'd like everybody to I'll share Herb's LinkedIn profile and any other contact information he feels comfortable sharing. You can
Sure.
check him out, connect with him on LinkedIn, I assume, and
Yeah, absolutely.
other
Well,
socials. Yeah. Herb, I really appreciate you reaching out and sharing this story with us and with me. And, I just love the way you tell it. I love the conversation that it created. And, so please, if connect with Herb or connect with us, and all of our contact information will be in these posts on the podcast, on the webpage, on LinkedIn, and on the social medias that this will go out on. So thank you for
yeah.
your time.
And Fletcher and Anna, thank you so very much. I enjoyed it, and I think I hope some folks benefit from it.
Yeah, awesome.